Good afternoon and welcome to this month's show. I'm Luke McCormick. During today's show, we will discuss critical issues facing government and industry leaders in using information technology to improve healthcare and healthcare services. With me on today's show are Lisa Lewis Person, Chief Operating Officer, Office of the National Coordinator for Health IT, Pat Flanders, Chief Information Officer, Defense Health Agency, Captain Hassan Teta, Warfighter Health Mission Chief, Joint Artificial Intelligence Center, Department of Defense. Bill Tinston, Director of Federal Electronic Health Records Modernization. Thomas Long, Director of Federal Healthcare, Verizon. Nick Saki, Principal Technology Strategist, Pure Storage. And Nicholas Svies, Chief Federal Technologist at Snowflake. Well, I love, as a former CIO, the conversions of IT with enabling the healthcare community. Very important topic. Lisa, we're going to start with you. Give us an example of the progress that's going on in this very important community.
So we've made great progress across the federal government. I'll specifically talk about what we have done in ONC over the last year. For those who don't know, the Office of the National Coordinator for Health IT is responsible for regulating the electronic health record industry. We coordinate across the federal government and with industry in regard to health information technology programs and policies. And we also are the federal agency responsible for facilitating interoperability of electronic health records, health information technology in general, and making sure that all of our health information flows in a safe and secure manner to where it needs to be when we need it most. And so we have done a few things over the last year. First, we published our Federal Health IT Strategic Plan. We worked with over 25 of our federal partners to put this strategic plan together. And so I want to thank all of our partners for that work. We also released our final rule. It's the 21st Century Cures Interoperability Rule. And both of those that rule and that document push us toward interoperability of health information. So the safe and secure flow of health information is critical to transforming how we deliver health care in America and ensuring better health and care for all of us.
Super important. Very happy to hear about the strategy as we really lay out this capability and be respectful and mindful to the security of these records as well. Pat, how about over at DHA? A lot of activity going on there. You all have really been on a journey over there to modernize that environment.
Yep. So, the most exciting thing going is our adoption of a commercial electronic health record. The name of that program is Military Health System Genesis. I don't run that, but in my area, I modernize the network. And with Genesis, it's a fundamental change because with our legacy systems that the EHRs are replacing, because it's a distributed system, it's all about local area network. Where with Genesis now, we're reaching back to the cloud, and we're wide area network centric. And so huge modernization there. We're replacing 4 legacy computer networks with one. It's called the Medical Community of Interest. And with that comes a host of security tools, standard VLAN architecture, and it's really helping enable Genesis and make us a lot more secure.
I'm sure in a modern environment, you really need to make sure you have a modern infrastructure to make sure those things are running top notch and being secure. So fantastic. Glad to hear the progress there. Captain Teta, how about over at the Jake? A lot of activity going on over there. Give us an outline, give us an update as to how the program's going.
Thank you. Thank you, Luke. The program at the Jake is very robust. You mentioned activity, and my colleagues have talked about all the great things that are going on in their respective organizations. We are working with all of those organizations, including the folks over at DHA, to do the great work of transforming the Department of Defense by leveraging AI. Now that sounds like a very lofty title and lofty goal and vision, but under leadership of General growing. We are exactly doing just that. We are leading AI adoption at scale. There are a couple projects I'll highlight as we go into this, accelerating joint AI capabilities. We're providing enterprise AI services, and this is across many different domains to include health, of course. And probably more importantly, and probably very exciting, is we're creating an AI friendly ecosystem, so that folks will be comfortable with using AI. Obviously, we are really at the intersection of where work, technology, and data and people kind of come together, and working with our respective partners to include even the VA and our commercial partners to bring to bear this exciting technology so it can actually help address some of the many challenges we have in healthcare and improve the provision of care that we deliver to our warfighters and their families.
Interesting angle with AI incorporated into the healthcare system. So we're be eager to hear more about that. And we really do have a nice constellation of folks on this panel to hit all aspects, including the very important electronic health record itself. So Bill, tell us about what's happening in regards to the activity going on in regards to electronic health records.
Oh, great. I'd love to. So Bill Tinston, director of the firm. So the firm is, if you don't know, the organization that the Department of Defense and the Department of Veterans Affairs had the foresight to set up when they recognized that they sort of backed into a joint program with the deployment of the electronic health record in DoD and the deployment of the electronic health record in the VA, right? It's a single common record about the patient, not where the care is delivered or who delivered the care. So they looked around and said, hey, we need somebody to look across this whole space. They created the firm. And then I've been fortunate enough to be the director of the firm. So what we've accomplished, or what's happening right now with the firm, builds on what Pat talked about, what Lisa talked about, what Hassan talked about, and lots of other stuff going on, right? So the DoD side, Pat talked about MHS Genesis. The DoD side, a few weeks ago at this point, delivered Wave Carson. It was 150 locations. It was 12 states. It was a ridiculously complex implementation and rollout of the health record across a huge swath of the Defense Health Agency, and Pat's infrastructure was all there to support it. As we've been working with the DoD and the VA on the joint HIE, or Joint Health Information Exchange, we've driven the DoD from 14% interoperability with community care electronic health records to 65, and the VA from 30% to 65. A lot of that driven by what Lisa was talking about, the rules and the good work that the ONC does in getting standards in place. We've also started to implement the FHIR standards between the VA and the DoD, and we're working with the commercial health information exchanges to get them implemented there. And that just brings an incredibly powerful improvement in availability and usability of the data in the various domains that we're getting the data, so that we get the data that the provider needs for an encounter about a patient that's relevant, right? They can actually indicate up front what would be relevant. And because we're engaging these FHIR standards to get the data, we can bring that correct data back, present it in the workflow, and make the experience seamless to the providers and the users of the health systems that we're supporting, which at the moment is the Department of Defense, the Department of Veterans Affairs, and the Department of Homeland Security's Coast Guard. And I imagine there's opportunity going forward to bring other federal healthcare providers into the fold of the single common record as we go forward.
Those are some impressive stats there, and it's really great to see the whole picture come together, as you said, from Lisa all the way down, sort of pointing that North Star, giving you the infrastructure. And as the OMB CIO stated yesterday on the program, meeting the patients where they are, right? And I think that's really important. Which leads us to you, Thomas. We can't do all this unless we have some great infrastructure out there, some great capabilities from our partners to enable these things to happen. So tell us what's happening from the Verizon perspective.
Yeah, I appreciate it. There's been a ton of innovation, a ton of new connected medical devices being developed over the past few years. I think the big change I've seen is I really feel that I see IT leaning in a lot more with the clinical side of the healthcare systems to understand how this medical technology is going to evolve, and in the future, how IT can help enable these technologies. When you think about networks and bandwidth needed to operationalize technologies such as virtual reality or augmented reality, it really is a monumental shift from what was needed in the past. I also feel the IT departments fundamentally understand the benefits of edge computing and their capabilities, such as the lower latency and higher application availability, which maybe the clinical side might not have a great grasp of at this time. I think these technologies really open up many possibilities to improve care now, as well as limitless potential use cases in the future as technology manufacturers continue to innovate new technologies.
Yeah, I mean, it's you make a very good point about the IoT devices and the connected world out there, and every one of these has a sort of embedded technology inside of them that has to be connected. So I'm glad to see that Verizon has become a leader in this area and really helping to enable this environment. Nick Saki, we've got to store all this data, and there's a lot of data out there. Tell us how Pure Storage fits into this.
The joy of this panel is having the opportunity to talk about the end-to-end life cycle of data from the point of the patient all the way back to the infrastructure, and then how that data can be leveraged to improve clinician practice, patient outcomes, and of course, medical and follow-on research to support addressing everything from longstanding chronic healthcare issues all the way to current crisis, pandemic, epidemic management and tracking. But as my colleague Tom Long said from Verizon, there's a monumental amount of data out there. And in order to leverage it and manipulate it, it's got to be at the point of need, much like patient care. Data has to be processed throughout its life cycle. And what we build, of course, are the tools for manipulating that across the full spectrum of patient-centered and health-based outcomes and practices. So everything from virtual desktop infrastructure to electronic healthcare record management to telemedicine. And we've had obviously a tremendous year of growth across all of those practices. But what we're seeing is really, I wouldn't say revolutionary, but tremendous acceleration in the ability to take current data and make inferences and evaluations and assessments of everything from, obviously the flow and expansion and then subsequent treatment and changes in the COVID pandemic population to a tremendous increase in the amount of telemedicine services that have been delivered all across the nation within the federal government, state and local governments, and of course, private practices, which has fundamentally transformed the availability of healthcare to remote and underserved populations as well. So these things all work hand in hand. At the end of the day, infrastructure is about making data available to improve outcomes. And we've been very proud to partner with government and private industry across the healthcare space in order to be able to make that happen. And we've seen just tremendous change, rapid change in the quality and effectiveness of the care and the speed to insight across the country.
And we're certainly delighted, I'm sure everybody is, to have this emerging technology available to make these solutions comprehensive and as effective as they are starting to become. Nicholas Spiess, how about at Snowflake? We have all this data now, we have to do something with it. Tell us how Snowflake fits into that ecosystem.
Yeah, thanks, Luke. Thanks very much, and thanks for having me. It all comes down to sort of what data is being used for and how it can be used by all the agencies and all of the wonderful initiatives that we've heard about for the last couple of minutes. The thing that I love most, Luke, is that everybody you talk to on the panel so far is talking about data and how they're going to use it and how they're going to share it. And that's something that 2 years ago, if this panel was held back in 2019, we would not have been having the conversation that way. There's less sources of truth, which is kind of counterintuitive, right? We should only have one, but there's less of those going around these days, which means we're building things where the data can move freely from one agency to another because we're doing things like setting standards or building better libraries for our data, but we're also putting better platforms in place where that data can move seamlessly, not just between agencies, but between clouds, between countries when needed. And that's going to make everything better, from treatment to research and development of new vaccines, of new cures, of new treatments, all the way down to individualized care. How much aspirin should you take, not based on your weight, but based on your genetic makeup? There's a lot of really exciting things that data is going to continue to do, whether it's the good captain over there with his artificial intelligence, or it's Lisa developing a better health record interface. This is going to be where we're going over the next few years, and I'm so excited to see it.
Fantastic. And speaking of the captain, Captain Teta, let's talk about a specific program. We hear artificial intelligence in the medical community. I mean, that might actually make some people nervous. Is a computer, a machine going to do my diagnosis? And I think in some cases, the answer is they already is. But tell us about what's up at the Jake in regards to a specific program.
Yeah, let me highlight one specific program that's really important and really exciting. Our team right now, as we speak, are just engaging with our colleagues and partners in the Pacific Northwest. We just deployed what we call an artificial intelligence sort of application and solution at the point of care, thanks to the great work of all the folks that talked on the panel that really enable this moment to come to fruition. So we delivered at both the VA and at the military treatment facility, Madigan, and the Puget Sound VA, an augmented reality microscope that has an interface that has a computer vision module in it that has been trained on algorithms to help detect cancer. And we deployed this with our pathology colleagues there and some members from the Jake team and our product management team, led by Captain Danielle Long Highland there. And what that represents, Luke, is something that seems like, wow, this is so futuristic. It's space age, because the pathologist can look into this microscope, put a slide in, and the interface will draw circles around the pathology and give them a clue into into whether the abnormality is. And as a cardiac surgeon, as a thoracic surgeon, one that works in cancer, you can imagine this is very exciting for us. Now, that may seem like, wow, okay, what's the big deal? We just had this, new technology, nice tool, little toy for the pathologist to play with. But what it represents is really the culmination of everything that everyone has just spoken about. That was 10 years in the making, to get the data, to curate the data, to work with our colleagues in pathology, to work with our colleagues in surgery, to understand and to get the correct sort of applications and algorithms in place, to plate them into a system and an interface that could actually use computer vision to identify the cells, and then to implement and deploy that. So it represents the tip of the iceberg, but a ton of work that underneath and underpinned all of that was data sharing, was the accumulation of curating that data, was making the data AI-able is one of the terms that one of my colleagues in the VA likes to use. So that really represents sort of a pioneering platform, and that's just one of many, and that's in the domain of warfighter readiness, that, as you can imagine, will have great application and utility in the future. And it brings to bear everything that everyone talked about, and it's bringing AI, the technology, at the point of care to help improve the diagnoses and improve the care that the providers are delivering to patients. One of the things I like to tout is the military is always led in these domains. If you think about vaccines, if you think about blood storage and blood banking, it's been the military. If you talk about electronic health records, the work that Mr. Tinston and Mr. Flanders are working on, it was the military that actually started, electronic health records in the very early, time of that technology. And now we're just advancing and being the vanguards again in this other domain, a new frontier, so to speak. So that's just one of many very exciting projects, but I just wanted to highlight it because I think it represents really one of the sort of apogees of all the things that everyone's just talked about.
A fascinating case of a use case of AI being used in an environment that perhaps you wouldn't even think about. And you make a good point, two good points. One, that you're able to take that sort of from the petri dish and get it into a full operational environment. And boy, nobody does it like the DoD, to be able to take that and then be able to run it at scale, right? I mean, once it's sort of through the DoD gauntlet, it's ready for prime time. All right, we're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network.